Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here in a very rainy Commonwealth, which is kind of funny considering that the sun's actually shining here in Scotland for a change, but here we are. So we're continuing with the Wasteland Botany, and we're going to talk about some of the plants that you find in Fallout 4. So, quick reminder, I've classified the plants based on if they're consumable, if they count as food for the purposes of like survival mode, and whether they can be cooked into food or used in crafting other items. So some will be classed as something other than their scientifically correct classification, like potatoes and jalapenos are technically fruit, but they're used like vegetables, so we're classing them in that category. So there's a handful of kind of plants where the sort of leaves and the actual plant itself is useful in Fallout 4. Most of them actually come from Far Harbor, but the first one we're going to talk about is right here. So I'm just outside Sanctuary, so Vault 101, 111 actually is up there, Sanctuary's there, for the bloodleaf. So I'm going to talk about the bloodleaf and the black bloodleaf together. The bloodleaf is one that you find in various freshwater locations around the Commonwealth. It's a sort of aquatic or semi-aquatic plant. I can't find any real world analogue that these plants would be based on, so it's not very clear, but we have you find them in rivers and lakes and ponds and things all across the Commonwealth. They're very, very common, and they have these kind of long roots that you can sometimes see from underneath, and these distinctive red leaves and kind of flowers in the middle there, so you can harvest them and they all disappear. So you can harvest them and you can kind of make use of them. So if you eat them raw, so they're consumable. So if you eat it raw, you get 10 hit points, and it should be rads, but again, I think I've got a perk or something that changes how much rads you get from food, but normally it's 2 rads and 10 hit points of healing over 5 seconds. According to the Brotherhood of Steel's Botany terminal, it is edible but ill-advised due to the radiation, but for the purpose of survival mode, it's not considered food, and the chemist perk actually improves the healing capabilities of this plant. So that's kind of interesting. It can be used in cooking, so we're just going to head back up to Sanctuary to the cooking station if we don't get stuck on tiny ledges. Yeah, very rainy day today in the Commonwealth, but never mind. Anyway, right, so yes, there's a couple of cooking recipes that use the blood leaf. So I think should have double checked what they were actually listed under. So yep, must be under soup. Yeah, there we go. So you've got the squirrel stew, so you need a blood leaf, a carrot, 2 dirty water, squirrel bits and a potato to combine to make a squirrel stew. It's quite an interesting item. So it heals 105 hit points, and it boosts your experience point gain by 2% for 2 hours, which is pretty impressive. And it does also count as food and water in survival mode, so it refreshes both, which is also quite nice. It's also a couple of crafting recipes that you can use at the chemistry station with blood leaf. So first one is, now does that come under, no, under healing? Mosquito spit, yep. So if you have a blood sac, which you could get from the blood bugs, a blood leaf, glass and steel, you can make mosquito spit, which gives you plus 25 maximum health for 20 minutes. So quite a useful one if you're going into a tough battle. And that boosts your maximum health, makes you a wee bit tougher, which is nice. For maximum speed, you might want to consider Ultra Jet. So you need the blood leaf, fertiliser, a dose of jet and 2 plastic, and you also need the chemist perk, the first rank of chemist, to make it. And you can make Ultra Jet, which is obviously jet but better, giving you slow time and 100 maximum action points for 15 seconds. The downside is it does carry a 25% chance of addiction to jet, which is the same as the standard jet. So if you're going to use it, then you might as well use the better stuff, if that's the case. So that's the standard blood leaf. However, there is a subspecies which is found over in Far Harbor, so we're going to head over there and I will see you just shortly. Right, we're here on the dark and foggy island, right next to, it's a pond at the National Park campground, so we're quite near, you know, Far Harbor itself, and we're here for this, so bloodleaf. So it's just labelled as bloodleaf, but this is the black bloodleaf. It's a subspecies that's local to Far Harbor, possibly different because of the radioactive fog. And it's obviously distinctive because its colour is different. It's black instead of red. Makes sense. And it's not considered food on its own either. It can't be used in recipes as a substitute for the normal bloodleaf. It's a bit different, but the properties are the same. 10 hit points over 5 seconds and plus 2 rads, depending on your perks. But it is used in a couple of cooking recipes that are added by the DLC in which you find the plant. So we'll take a look at them. So there's 2 recipes that use the black blood leaf, and the first one should come under roast, and that is the seasoned rabbit skewers, so that's going to be under S. There it is. So seasoned rabbit skewers, you need an aster, a black blood leaf, a blight, which is the mushroom that you find on the trees in the island, a lureweed, which we'll get onto later in this video, and a rabbit leg. So if you cook that up, you get 45 hit points of healing, and you get +1 luck for 30 minutes, which is really, really interesting. So it's the only way to boost luck with a consumable that doesn't risk addiction, and it's obviously a reference to the lucky rabbit's foot, which is a well-known lucky charm that people will believe in, having a rabbit's foot that brings them luck. So that's quite funny that if you eat a rabbit leg cooked with all these plants, then you get the luck as well. So that's an interesting one. And then the other one will be under soup, because we are talking chicken noodle soup. So the perfect thing when you're feeling unwell is chicken noodle soup. So you need your black blood leaf, you need a carrot, chicken thigh and dirty water, and that gives you 60 hit points of healing and 55 radiation resistance for 30 minutes as well. So again, it's quite a nice little reference there that, you know, chicken noodle soup is what people often get when they're unwell. So the fact that consuming this seems to have a protective effect on your system against radiation, just kind of an interesting one there. So that's the food recipes, so that obviously creates food items, but there is also a crafting recipe, although actually I think you do make it at the you make it here. So you do make it in the cooking station rather than the chemistry station, but because it's a drink, it's I don't consider it cooking, because you're not cooking food, you're creating a beverage. But this recipe is fire belly, so this requires an aster, a black blood leaf and vodka. The image, it looks like a stim pack, which is kind of strange. And you basically, it does cause you to lose hit points, 30 hit points, and your damage output gradually increases at low health. So it's a very interesting item. It has basically the same effect as a bloodied legendary weapon effect, and it's one of these ones that's probably quite niche, but if you've got a build where you're potentially using like legendary items that also have beneficial effects when your health is low, like bolstering, martyrs, or unyielding armor pieces, you might find this potentially useful for a wee bit extra damage bonus in those situations. So it'd be quite a unique build that you're working with, that you might find this useful. And this recipe as a reward. So Mitch, who's the bartender in the last plank in Far Harbor, he gives you the quest The Holdout, where he wants you to go and save his Uncle Ken, who's refusing to come to the town and wants to stay in his own place, despite the fog and the ghouls and the children of Atom and all the other nonsense that's happening. So if you go and convince old Ken to come back to Far Harbor, then Mitch will give you this recipe. It appears like a stim pack, but the way the game treats it is probably supposed to be a cocktail. It's treated like an alcoholic drink. It comes with a 25% chance of alcohol addiction, so you can assume that despite the image there, it is actually supposed to be a cocktail. So that's an interesting one, and you know, certainly some very niche items that have very interesting effects. Okay, finally found one. So I'm going to talk about the raw sap item now. I know that the sap itself isn't a plant, but it's the only plant-based thing that's in this category, so I didn't want to make a separate category for it. But you can find it in various places around the island as these sap buckets. So they're all over the place in various different locations along the roads and things, and so trees can be tapped for their sap, essentially using something like a spile, and you can then have like a collection bucket like this to harvest the sap, which can have various applications. Maple syrup being the kind of tastiest version of this in real life, I would say. And once you find where the trees are, it's quite easy to collect, so you can just kind of grab it there. Oh, I think there's another trapper around. So you can harvest it, and then it changes so you know it's been harvested. So there's quite a few trees. I'm here at Brookshead Lighthouse to find them. So there's quite a few dotted about here, and you can collect the sap. So when used raw, it gives you 20 hit points, and it should give you 2 rads as well. It doesn't count as food as far as survival mode is concerned. It doesn't count as a drink either, and it is in the highest disease risk category for consumables. So what can we use it for? Well, there is one interesting recipe that's available. There's another sap bucket there, so you can see. Oh, there's this guy. Hang on. Bite. Right, just had to do a little bit of pest control so that I could use a cooking station here. So the recipe, I don't even have it. Okay, never mind. So we're just gonna pretend that I have a recipe here. Yeah, must not have done the quest that way in this playthrough, but basically you can get a recipe for quite an interesting beverage. So you get it from Zealot Ware after you complete the side quest, The Trial of Brother Devon. So this quest centres around 2 brothers who are part of the Children of Atom and their lack of radiation resistance, which makes life in the Children of Atom a wee bit more challenging for them than others, let's say. So if you succeed in convincing Devon to stop fasting, then you'll be rewarded with this recipe. Ware's brew is really quite simple to make. You need 3 raw sap and a cooking station, and you distill the sap and drink it till you feel better according to the instructions. It's a really useful item to make. It gives you 100 hit points and removes 100 radiation from you. In survival mode, it apparently only removes 10 rads, but it's an instant rad removal, kind of like the refreshing beverage does. But Ware's Brew does also add fatigue and suppress immunity, just like Radaway does, so you might be better off just building a decontamination arch at Longfellow's cabin instead. But it's nice that it exists, and certainly without survival mode, if you're playing that, then it potentially has some utility for you. So kind of an interesting and unusual one. So that's great, and we are going to head over to find another interesting plant, which this is one of my favourite ones from this actually. So we're going to go back to the National Park campground. It's a very green Robobrain. Yeah, we'll be talking about them at some point. I do want to get into the robotics and things from Fallout. The RoboBrains especially are very interesting. There we go. So we're going to head down towards the water. There we go. So the next plant that I want to talk about is lureweed, which is this plant over here. So again, this is one plant that doesn't really seem to have a real life equivalent that I'm aware of. It's obviously evolved out of some kind of aquatic plant, and it has these stalks with sort of glowing ends that float on the water, kind of like water lilies, water lily pads. And they're found in water, especially kind of ponds and things like that. The stalk looks a lot like the lure of the anglers, which are creatures that have evolved, and they use the presence of these plants to their advantage so that they can hide and launch an ambush from under the water. And I do wonder what came first, whether the angler did and the plant kind of evolved to mimic it, or if it was the other way around, or if it's just pure coincidence that they both happen to evolve this same kind of thing. But you can harvest these plants. Just be wary, because you might find that there's an angler hiding there that's going to jump scare you and attack. But you can collect them, and they're quite interesting. So we'll head back to Longfellow's cabin. I don't care about defending Sanctuary Hills. There's 18 people there, plus mutant hounds and stuff. They can sort it themselves. So, lureweed does have a place in a couple of interesting cooking recipes. So we'll have a look at the raw plant first. So it's going to be under L. So you get 10 hit points and 2 rads. That seems to be pretty much the standard for most kind of plants that you can harvest, that you can also ingest. Lureweed does count as food as far as survival mode is concerned, and it has the standard disease risks that most kind of raw food would have. I do kind of wonder what the glowy part would taste like. Is it spicy? Is it bitter? What would it taste like? That would be really interesting. I guess it depends what it is that's causing the bioluminescence. And it is used in a couple of cooking recipes too. So we already talked about the seasoned rabbit skewers earlier, because that also requires so many recipes. So that also requires the black blood leaf. So we have already discussed that one, but there is also another one, which is the wolf ribs. Again, recipes that were added by the Far Harbor DLC because there's new creatures like the rabbits, the chickens, and the wolves. So for wolf ribs, you need a lureweed and you need a wolf meat. So super simple. And this grants you 60 hit points over 10 seconds. It counts as food, and it also grants night vision in outside at night. It does also seem to work in interior locations, despite what the kind of description says, but it gives you night vision for 5 minutes. It does mention a small accuracy bonus, but that is actually bugged. It was supposed to reduce your scope sway to a degree, but it's bugged and doesn't work. And I believe that the night vision can sometimes be a bit awkward in interior spaces and things as well. So should have been more useful than they are, the wolf ribs, but still quite an interesting thing. And it's the only thing really that grants you any kind of night vision in the game. So interesting, but I say it's a wee bit buggy, so your accuracy bonus doesn't actually apply, unfortunately. Which is a bit of a shame, but that's it there. So it's still decent food, I guess, if that's what you want. Character's outfit looks ridiculous. Anyway, so that's us done with Far Harbor for today. So the next place, we want to head back to the Commonwealth for this last plant. So, okay, we are here. So we are in the Pridwin in the biolab. So apparently we're doing a super mutant autopsy, but we're here, we're interested in the Botany terminal here, so we're going to have a look at that first. And I think some of you might know where we're going here. So we have got experiment NRT 001. So this was a plant that was found by some of the sort of teams that have been sent out to collect samples of the local flora, corrupted by radiation, but some of them have promising properties, so they're going to study them and they're going to hybridise them with tougher plants to kind of keep growing them so that they can study them and potentially make use of them. So interesting one there. And then the next log, nope. Sometimes this thing is so temperamental. There we go. So unexpected find today. One of our field scribes brought a small root he found at the mouth of a river. Normally I wouldn't hold high hopes for such a small specimen, but the root is displaying chemical properties I've never seen before. I'm not sure anything will come of it, but it's certainly worth experimenting on. So found a small root at the mouth of a river, and then it's doing surprisingly well. Grafted it onto hard-air stock and yielded a strong leafy plant with thick roots. Uncertain of future applications, but it seems safe to ingest, so boiled it in water and it makes an oddly good tea. Interesting. And then the plant has started glowing and she's done a bunch of tests and it's not radiation, it's bioluminescence. So she's going to continue the tests. I say she, we don't actually know the gender of this particular scribe, but her fellow scribe, or their fellow scribes, are suggesting probably shouldn't drink tea made from the leaves anymore, but it's really good and I don't see the harm. So yeah, we've got some glowy plant that is a really good tea that makes you feel really healthy. So they have decided to call it glow leaf, and it has restorative properties because they feel healthier than ever, but colleagues think they're getting addicted to the tea, and anyone who tells me I can't have my cup of glow leaf tea can stuff it. So kind of like me and my coffee in the mornings. And then yeah, unfortunately it seems to have potentially had some detrimental effect because the senior botany scribe has been reassigned and the experiment has been dropped. So what is this plant? Well, let's take a look at it because it's right there. Experimental plant. So it's, yeah, glows and it's a nice kind of blue colour with a strong root. So I'm just going to harvest one to have a look at it. The robot doesn't tend to like it, but I don't really care about that. I'm a sentinel in the Brotherhood, so I can do what I want. So experimental plant, standard kind of plant, raw plant, 10 hit points and 2 rads, just like what we've seen with all the other ones, so that's fine. It doesn't count as food in survival mode, and despite what was said in the terminal, in the game there's no addiction mechanic, so it's not addictive. You can find one growing on the island in Far Harbor near Eden Meadows Cinema. It's quite well hidden, but there is one growing there, which is interesting. It's not using any crafting recipes, at least not in this game, but I think anyone that's played the Elder Scrolls games will recognise this plant. Even the experimental designation is a big hint that Sinderion would be interested in this one. It's Nirnroot. It's a reference to the Nirnroot, although this variety doesn't seem to sing at you, but it's a clear reference to the glowing, noisy plant that you find across Tamriel. It is just an Easter egg. It's a fun little nod to Bethesda's other major IP. It's not, yeah, because I know there's the fan theory that Fallout and the Elder Scrolls take place in the same universe, just thousands of years apart. Pete Hines has confirmed that that's not the case. It is just an Easter egg and a fun little nod, especially because, you know, both Oblivion and Skyrim have quite big kind of collection quests involving there's the Nirnroot and then there's the Crimson Nirnroot, I think it's called, and that, I can't remember the name of it now, the big underground place that you go, that's all full of glowing mushrooms and giants and Dwemer robots and all sorts of crazy stuff, and you have to go and collect like so many. The Crimson Nirnroots there, I can't remember, is it the Black Reach, is that what it's called? I should know this, but anyway, yeah, so, you know, there's that, and then in Oblivion, for when you actually meet Sinderion and he wants you to collect Nirnroot and he does interesting alchemical things with them. So it's just a fun little nod to the Elder Scrolls. there's a few of those little ones, like the markers on the telegraph poles or the telephone poles that have TES4 on them and things like that. So it's just a fun little hello. It's just a fun little kind of Easter egg, but I do quite like it. You know, makes me happy. I'd love it when we get these little Easter eggs in games, especially you know, when we're crossing over some of my favourite games. I know the other one I like to, I don't know if anybody remembers this, in Skyrim, way back when I'm trying to remember what it was. It was when Steam started offering kind of support for modders, you know, so that they could put the mods into Steam and players could download mods, you know, without going through a lot of faff and, you know, moving game files and things around. That they had support for that for games, and they did a crossover with Valve and Skyrim where the Space Core from Portal 2 landed, and you could carry it around with you and stuff, and then, you know, turn it into a helmet and things like that. And I thought that was hilarious, because this like Space Core is the best. It's the best. Such a good, just such a fun little thing. I remember that. I don't know if anyone else remembers that, but it was quite a fun little crossover there in Skyrim, and I do love that sort of thing. So that's all the kind of plants in Fallout 4 that are just used as plants essentially. So we've still got vegetables and fruit and seeds to do. Okay. Well, somebody's enthusiastic about science. That's nice to see. You know, this is the Science Fallout series, so this guy clearly is very keen to get started. I don't know, they're obviously doing a autopsy, or it's not really an autopsy, it's dissection of the super mutant who's already. Okay, since she acts politely. But I feel like this super mutant, is he missing an eye? This is totally... Yeah. Ugh. Did somebody actually pull his eye out? That's disgusting. I don't eyes creep me out. I don't like dealing with eyeballs, I have to say. Even when I was a vet, if I had to, you know, like sometimes with animals you do have to remove their eyeballs and things like that surgically, and it's just always giving me the heebie-jeebies. But anyway, so that is us for plants. So next up, we'll maybe do the fruit, because there's quite a lot of fun ones both in this game and in Fallout New Vegas, and there is even a couple in Fallout 3 that are worth talking about. So that'll be the plan for the next time. Hopefully you found this interesting and fun. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.